knowledge. That's stuff about me. So first, what is crystallization? Let's like start from the basics. Who knows what it is? Yeah.
So like it's when you go over basically everything that you talked about and like solidify all your arguments and your arguments against your opponents.
Yeah. Who else has different like interpretations of what crystallization could mean? Like other important. How about this? What else is crystallization called? Yeah.
Weighing.
Yes, weighing. That's like part of it. People also call it voting issues. So like giving your voters at the end of a round. Hold on. What's this? Yeah, cool. So crystallization is basically like packaging a whole messy round from like, it's like been like 40 minutes of a pretty intense round, and you want to make sure that it sounds as easy to understand as possible. So you're basically simplifying every issue and explaining why you're winning the key steps in order to have like a coherent ballot story. So I would probably say the word ballot story a lot in this lecture. Ballot story is basically just like why the judge should vote for you. So your ballot story is not necessarily, or it actually will never be, oh, I'm winning my first, second, third contentions, I'm winning all of my framework justifications, I'm winning all of my answers to their framework, and I'm winning like all turns against every single one of their contentions, right? Your ballot story is not, it doesn't sound believable to a judge if you just get up and say they're absolutely being destroyed on every aspect of this flow. Instead, your ballot story should just explain why the only option the judge has is to vote for you, but not necessarily that you're winning every single argument. You should be honest about why you're losing and explain why it doesn't matter and why you're still winning. So, crystallization, that's like generally what crystallization is. It's the idea that you are selling your story to the judge. It's like packaging it out into like a nice little box, basically, and handing it to the judge at the end of the debate. It's also super important to remember that this is like happening in the last speech. If you crystallize or explain like your single path to the ballot in the MC or 1AR, they will just answer that path to the ballot and beat it. In the 2NR, you can crystallize. So now, when to crystallize? The 2NR and the 1A. Sorry, the 2NR and the 2AR. So, who can explain why it might be a bad idea to do a ton of crystallization in the 1AR? Yeah.
Because if you do crystallization in 1AR, the 2AR they have like a lot of time to respond to it, so they don't completely destroy you, and maybe like focus on the 2AR.
Yeah, that sounds pretty extreme, but yeah, definitely. When you spend time, and also when you're crystallizing, what are you not doing?
Making arguments.
Yeah, so you're not making arguments. You're not spending time on, it's basically the idea of like framing and overviews versus line by line. Every speech should have a balance of these two things, but the 2NR and 2AR should have extra framing and overviews. If you don't have both an overview at the beginning of your 2NR or 2AR that are like, they've made this concession, that means they lose, or they fail to understand this big picture framing issue. Now I'm going to win why it's true and win my offense under that framing issue. So you should vote for me. And then you give your speech. You spend time in the line by line winning the necessary arguments, and then you go back to crystallization at the end. So I think crystallization is not, I think it was often taught to me as, oh, if you have 30 seconds left on the timer, just stop doing the line by line and explain your voters. Explain 3 reasons why they should vote for you. I think a much better way to conceive of it is there should be a story that's like staggered throughout the round, right? So it should be a story where you start at the top of the 2NR or the top of the 2AR and explain, like, listen, this is how this speech is going to go. I'm going to win the things I need to win. You're going to have no option but to vote for me. Obviously, you don't say it in those words, but that is the sentiment behind what you're saying. Then you win the things you need to win, and then you go back. Now I've won the things I need to win. Now you have to vote for me. It's instead of just saying, giving your speech, and then attempting to, in the very last bit of the 2NR or 2AR, attempting to be like, oh, by the way, I just made a ton of arguments. This one means I win, this one means I win, this one means I win. It doesn't tell a coherent balanced story. And also, if you just have 3 independent arguments and 3 independent reasons that mean you win, the judge is not going to necessarily take that into account in terms of the big picture. It'd be very easy for the 2AR to just weigh against those 3 arguments. So when to crystallize would be throughout the 2NR and 2AR. And every time you move between layers. I think this one's really important. So when to crystallize. Beginning and end. And when you move so who thinks they know what it means when I say when you move between layers? Yeah.
Like when you go from the framework debate to the convention level debate, or the theory to framework, convention level.
Exactly. Anytime you're going to tell your judge to shift their pen to some other area of the flow instead of just going straight down, for example, you should be taking that time because, for example, you never want to just say, now on to theory and then start blitzing out arguments at 300 words per minute, right? The judge will not catch the first 4 seconds of those arguments. They just won't because when judges flow, they flow their whole speech and they're probably still catching up on things you said on the last flow when you tell them to move to the next flow, and then have to find your argument, and it takes a while. So instead of just either just standing there and waiting for them to shift, or blitzing out arguments that you know they're going to be a waste of time and they're not going to catch, you should take that time in between flows to do more framing. So I would always say, for example, if I had won theory, I'd say, now I've won theory, the round is over. However, even if you don't buy, so this is I sort of jumping around, but this is the even if scenarios I'll talk about throughout this lecture. But when you do this framing, you'd say oh, but even if you don't buy that I've won the theory flow, you would still vote for me on substance. And then you would do that way. So basically, you are explaining the ballot story throughout the speech, rather than forcing the judge to synthesize all of the information they just heard in the 6-minute 2NR at the very end. You want to make it logical for them, because if they are flowing in the mindset of, oh, they're winning this argument for this reason, psychologically, they'll just be more checked into you. They'll understand, if they understand why you're making an argument, while you're making the argument, they will just give it more credence, right? They'll understand your strategy better, and it won't just seem like a floating argument. For example, if they don't know the implication of an argument, if you spend a really long time winning one framework justification, right, and you explain why, this is and you don't explain, in the beginning. For example, if you were winning your second justification to your framework really well, right, and you have an argument about why that means it precludes every other framework, if you just made an argument okay, I'm going to win my second justification for the framework, it precludes there are preclusive arguments for why comes first, now I'm going to win it, then you win it, and then you say this means the framework debate is over, or this means that their framework always fails, or this means their framework fails to guide action, or follow, be moral, things like that. It becomes way clearer than if you were just they concede my second justification, and then you blitz out the second justification, extend it across the flow, and then immediately move on, and then at the end be when they conceded my second justification, that, by the way, that meant that my framework came first, right? That's way more confusing. The judge has to go back and re-remember the argument and rethink about why that means that the framework debate is over. If you do that work in the speech, while you're making the argument, the judge will be way more checked in and will understand the implications way more. If the more relevant they think the arguments you're making are, the more they're going to flow them also, right? If you just make a bunch of arguments, they might be I don't know why they're making these arguments. I'm probably not going to have to flow them very well. But if you frame it before you make the arguments as these arguments end the round, it will be much clearer, and they will just want to pay more attention. Because remember, the judges are people. I think that's the biggest thing that people forget. They are not calculators, and they make human error, and the idea is you want to minimize that error as much as possible, and that is like entirely in your hands. So how much time to spend is always an interesting question. How much time have you guys learned, have people taught you to spend on crystallization? Yeah.
So I was taught that at the very end of your speech, I should only be spending like you said before, 30 seconds on it maybe.
Yeah.
For the very last thing. So.
Yeah. I think a lot of people learn that. I definitely learned that as well. So I think a good rule of thumb is if you have to win a lot, I'm not saying that you have to reserve giant portions of your speech time in the beginning and end of your speech, because I know that's not realistic. Instead, that's why I think the crystallization between speeches, or sorry, not between speeches, between flows, and a constant narrative that runs throughout the 2NR or throughout the 2AR is really important. Because then, even if you say don't have time to give a 1-minute speech about why you're really winning, and sometimes you just won't have time for that, the judge still understands where you're coming from. So, and it also just so it's just a much better time trade-off to spend those 5 seconds between flows than to necessarily reserve giant portions at the end. However, the more time you can allocate to it, the better, as long as you've won the arguments you need to win. So generally, how much time to spend is you should definitely spend around 15 seconds at the top of the speech. When I say at the top of the speech, by the way, I just mean at the beginning of the speech. It's around 15 seconds at the start. Just explaining what you're going to go for and why it's important. I think being yeah.
Isn't that the over?
Yeah, so it's an overview, but overview is an aspect of crystallization.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. So an overview is crystallization, because crystallization is basically just making the round clear, crystal clear, and it's the idea that you are making the round manageable and understandable. So overviews count as crystallization because ideally you're pre-framing the speech, then you are giving the speech, and then you are synthesizing the speech in the end. So you are basically explaining what mindset they should be in going into the arguments you're making. You should make those arguments and then explain why that means they vote for you. So around 15 seconds at the start, plus a few seconds between flows. So whenever you need to move on to a different layer or a different thing you win, for example, obviously if you win your framework, you then need to explain why you're winning your contentions. Or if you're conceding to their framework, you should be very clear about it. Instead of, for example, extending all your contentions in the 2AR, in the 2AR, and extending all of your turns to their contentions in the 2AR, and leaving the judge to decide, that's never going to work well for you because the 2AR is really short. You should decide early on, and before the 2AR, you should know if you're going for your offense or turns to their offense. So, for example, you should know if you're if you read a util framework and they read a CONTAF, right? You should know if you're going to go for turns on the if you're affirming, you read a util app and they read a content C. You should know if you're going to collapse the turns on the content C or extensions of your util offense. And you should know that before the 2AR starts. So if you spend 15 seconds at the start and then a few seconds between layers, so for example, you explicitly concede the Kant framework in the 2AR, and you say, extend their response to the util, for example. You can totally do that. You can extend their defense to your framework if you want to have a clear collapse. And I think that's really helpful, because then you can explain why they set up this even-if scenario, right? They tried to beat back the framework, but they also tried to turn my framework, for example. Then they tried to beat back my app and go for their own NC, but they also tried to turn my app. In that case, I would want to say, okay, extend their response to util, that Kantianism always has to come first. This means Kantianism is true. That means they don't have access to any of their turns to util anymore, if they're killing you on the util debate, right? And then you can say, however, this doesn't matter because they've conceded a turn to the NC. And then you really just explain the turn for the remainder of the 2AR. That's a much clearer strategy because it makes it seem like the ballot for you is inescapable, right? Like there's no other way to vote for you because they've lost all their offense on the app and they've conceded a turn, for example. That makes it way clearer than if you just try to extend all your offense like through the turns and then just extend your turns. Then the judge doesn't really know what you're going for, so they might miss the turn or not care enough about the turn to the NC because they might be confused or think that you win util. Or so basically you just want to go for the path of least resistance. So 15 seconds at the start, plus a few seconds between layers, plus as much as possible at the end. And when I say possible, I basically mean don't sacrifice winning the arguments you need to win. If you're saying that the reason why they're voting for you is because you've won your framework and you've won the contention to your framework, you should not be making arguments like, for example, why it really matters that you've won your framework and contention, why they can do nothing else but vote for you, and why your app saves so many lives, and why your app is so fantastic, and they really messed up by not answering your framework contention properly, but then not actually extending your framework or contention, right? You don't want to spend so much time just selling it or making fun of your opponent for not doing a good job and then not actually win what you need to win. Yeah, I think another good way to think about this is like if your overview creates like a checklist, right? Like maybe like the things you're going to win in order to win the round, like framework, contention, or like turns to NC, or like if you want to say you're winning theory, but even if you don't win theory, you're also winning maybe the disad or something like that, right? Your overview should create like a checklist for what you need to win in order to win the round, and then basically like the line by line debate should just like check these things off. And after you check each thing off, you should say, okay, now I've won this. This means we have to go to this layer now. Right? Like now that I've won the framework, all I have to do now to win the round is win the contention. It's going to be really easy because they've conceded this argument. Doing work like that is really good because then the judge is like, yeah, it will be really easy because they've conceded that argument. Right? It puts them on your page. And also, being honest about things. For example, I know I conceded the whole NC contention. It doesn't matter though, because they've conceded all the reasons why my framework comes first. You know, things like that, where you do framing, where you get the judge on the same page, and explain how even if perceptually, maybe you're behind on some layers, those are going to be irrelevant. So for example, like I know I'm getting destroyed on the substance debate. Probably don't say destroyed. Maybe I know I'm behind on substance. Problem is, if they've conceded that theory comes before substance, they can't win the round if they're behind on theory. Things like that explain how you are predicting their objections to voting for you when they're looking at their flow. You're predicting the places you're behind, and you're explaining why like they really don't have to worry about that. They can totally still vote for you on the key things. So overview creates a checklist, then the line by line should like check off the boxes, and then the crystallization at the end should basically just like explain why, like just conclude it and wrap it up and explain why now that you've checked off all these boxes, there's nothing to do other than vote for you. Does anyone have any questions up until this point? No? Okay, cool. So next I think a really important thing is issue selection. I think that this might be a big problem that a lot of debaters have in terms of even if they're good at crystallizing, they always crystallize on the wrong things. For example, if you're in the 2AR, for example, sometimes people have this desire that they always have to go for the app, right? They feel like they read the app, they spent 6 minutes on it, spent a long time writing it. Maybe the judge will think they'll look like wimpy, for example, if they just go for turns or if they concede the framework, for example. But I think it's always best to go for the path of least resistance. So I'll try that here. So who can like explain to me what that means? Let's see some new hands. Yeah.
If you should choose the easiest way that you can to win.
Yes, definitely. So I think a good structure for a 2AR or a 2NR is basically, so one metaphor you already used was like making the checklist and checking off the boxes, then explaining why that means you win. Another way, if you want to think about it, if that didn't make a lot of sense to you, would be also winning the path of least resistance, and these work together. I made a new acronym, PLLR. You want to win the path of least resistance, and then you want to just close doors for their strategy. And I think that's a really good way to conceptualize these ending speeches, because if you think about it, you want to give a very clear way for them to vote for you, right? A conceded turn to the NC, or theory, maybe they conceded drop the debater, and they just didn't have a lot of offense on theory. Or maybe they conceded a reason why your critique or your roll to ballot always comes before their roll to ballot, right? You extend that easy argument, like the argument that you have in your case, it's always like your go-to, or the one that you know people will concede. Extend that, extend why means you win. Sometimes this isn't easy. Sometimes the path of least resistance is a 4-minute 2NR strategy, right? Sometimes your opponent's really good. But generally, winning the path of least resistance, so the clearest ballot story, so you want to win like the thing that the judge will write on their ballot in the RFD for why they voted for you, and then close doors for their strategy. So for example, you win your theory shell, and you explain, I want you to vote on theory. So you want the ballot to say like, I voted on theory, right? So you win your theory shell, so they say they voted on theory for you, because that's the clearest way, and it makes them not have to evaluate maybe the really messy substance debate. When I say substance, does everyone know what I mean? Okay, cool. Just the case debate, right? So if you win theory and you want them to say, I voted on theory, but then you also will close doors for their strategy. So for example, if you know that they're going to go really hard, say this is your 2NR, right? You want them to vote on theory, the 1AR really undercovered it. But the 1AR did a fantastic job on the AF, right? They explained all the reasons why like it came before the NC. Your NC maybe wasn't that well constructed, or had a lot of holes in it, or maybe there were a lot of arguments in the AF that you conceded that turned the NC, right? Things like that. It wasn't a great debate on substance for you. So you want them to say, I voted on theory, because that's your strategy. That's the path of least resistance. But then also, you want to explain why you can close doors for them. So you want to avoid them spending 3 minutes of the 2AR explaining. For example, if you just said vote on theory and sat down, the 2AR could be a bunch of arguments, a bunch of like deflationary, defensive arguments on theory, trying to muddle the theory debate as much as possible and make it go away, and then extending substance cleanly, right? Because you didn't give them any pushback on substance. Because you're just like, I'm just going for theory. Cool. But if you want them to say, you say you want them to vote on theory, but then you should say, like vote on theory, but even if they beat it back, they can't win substance. And even if you know that you're on the wrong side of the issues, for example, like their app maybe totally does turn your NC, right? Or you just didn't have good answers to their framework. If you think about it, the 2NR is really long and the 2AR is really short. So if you're at the very least able to say a bunch of reasons that at least they have to answer, even if they're not good reasons, why you're winning substance, that makes the 2AR way more difficult. Because first, they still have to answer your path of least resistance. They have to somehow get rid of theory, but they can't spend 3 minutes getting rid of theory, or they can't spend 2:30 getting rid of theory and 5 seconds extending substance and 20 seconds of crystallization, for example, right? That would be like not as hard speech in the 2AR. But if all of a sudden they have to spend a whole minute even winning substance, right? Then they only have maybe 1:30 to win theory, to get rid of theory, and that's too short, right? So arguments like that, where if they really did a bad job on the theory debate, you want them to be able to spend the least amount of time being able to salvage it in the next speech. Yeah.
So what do we do if we're on the other end of that? like if someone does that to us.
Yeah, so if someone like goes for the path of least resistance and then closes doors to their strategy.
Yeah.
So you should also be doing the same thing, which is going for the path of least resistance and then closing doors for, like, this is a strategy that's universal, right? It's also for the 2AR.
Yeah.
So basically, this is just like whenever you hit someone who is like maybe like good at telling a battle story, they're going to do something similar to this. They'll explain why they're winning, the easiest place to vote for them, and then they'll explain why they can't, why you can't win what you want to win. So basically what you have to do is just explain why you are winning what you have to win.
Okay.
Why they misunderstand the round. Why they don't, why they miss maybe some big framing issue about how the layers interact with each other. Maybe they assume theory comes before substance, but they conceded some floating fairness isn't a voter argument that was in the AF or something, right? So you just have to basically utilize your own strategic outs to do the exact same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Let me check this out. It is that. Cool. I think we're going to go through the drill at the end, which is cool. So then, selling it to the judge. So, issue selection is path of least resistance. I think also, please don't just go through your favorite arguments. I know that might be self-explanatory, but often I found myself going through the contention I was like, I enjoyed explaining the most, or that I thought was like really cool or clever, right? I just think it was fun, and I like maybe, or I like really enjoyed reading the frameworks that I read, and maybe I just like go for the argument that I thought was super cool and explaining my framework really well, right? Don't go for those arguments if you have other arguments that are like cold conceded and have like weighing underneath, for example, right? You should go for the argument that is the most clear to the judge. Because remember, the argument that's most clear to you will not always be the argument that's most clear to the judge. So I'm selling it to the judge. So I think a really important aspect of crystallization that it might be sort of unfortunate that it's such a big part because it's sort of arbitrary at times. It's not necessarily about like the flow and the line by line, but it's important regardless. Is the idea of ethos. Who knows what ethos is? See some new hands. Yeah.
I like showing you're credible.
Yeah. Basically, ethos is just like when you're a debater, you want to have some degree of ethos. So you want to have a degree of being passionate about what you're saying and making the judge feel like inspired, but not necessarily inspired by your theory shell, but like make them feel like they are on the same wavelength as you, right? Make them understand that we all like are on the same page here. We all maybe would have thought that it would have been great for your opponent to answer theory, but they didn't, so they have to vote for you. Things like that, where you explain why you want to be like loud, you want to be during crystallization, you want to be clear, you want to slow down. I'll write these down. Loud, clear, slow down, make eye contact. And also, like, this is sort of weird to say, but be a real person. In that, don't just, like, scream at your opponent or judge or make them feel, like, taken aback. Or say things like, they're just getting, like, demolished on this debate, right? Things like that don't make the judge want to vote for you, right? It would probably be pretty funny if you made, like, a bunch of reasons why they're getting, like, absolutely, like, demolished. Or, like, why you're just, like, trashing them. Or things like that. If you say things like that, the judge will make, oh, it would be really funny if they said that and then they lost. You know, I'm not saying that the judge will intervene against you, but it doesn't make the judge any more inclined to vote for you. What makes the judge inclined to vote for you? If you prove that you understand the round as a whole, right? And you prove that you understand the big picture. So, this includes proving that you understand that you're losing what you're losing. And why it doesn't matter. Or predicting the biggest places where your opponent's going to go for in the next speech. So, for example, instead of just saying, just extending theory and then extending substance. In this debate, right, the debate where you maybe are clearly winning, back to the example where you're clearly winning your theory shell, but you're losing substance. Instead of just extending theory and extending substance, say, now I know they're going to go for substance in the next speech. They're going to try to deflate theory so it doesn't matter, and then try to get you to vote on substance. You cannot vote on substance, and then explain why. Or you cannot let them deflate theory because they've conceded. When I say deflate theory, by the way, I just mean that you can't let them try to like make it go away. You can't let them deflate theory because they've conceded drop the debater. And they've conceded they don't get an RBI. So there's no way for them to win on the theory shell. And they've conceded that they will lose if they violate the theory shell. Things like that, we extend those and make it as reasons why you know they're going to go for it, but they can't do it. And also make it seem like they're being reasonable, right? Like you wish they could go for this, but they can't because they've conceded this argument. Like you wanted to have a debate on substance, but they were really unfair. Things like that make you seem like a real person and make the judge want to vote for you. So in general, when you're loud, I don't think that this means that you should like raise your volume during crystallization. I think it just means you should always be loud when you're reading, right? Always be clear. Because I think that if you're generally loud, it makes the judge want to vote for you. Not like screaming, right? But if you're loud and clear, that means the judge has been understanding your arguments better the whole time. That's like a general debate thing. It's just particularly important in crystallization. Whereas if you just mumble, like, I'm winning theory, they're going to win substance, that doesn't matter though, because they can see the drop the debater, right? That does not seem very compelling at all. The judge will be like, really? Does it matter? You don't seem like you think it does. Or like, so being clear is really important. Obviously, it's crystallization. It's time to make the round clear. If you're not clear in your speaking voice, there's no way for them to want to vote for you. Like, there's no point in doing framing if they can't understand it. Slowing down. I think that this one deserves like 2 stars. Interrupting. So do you guys all know like the spreading voice? Yeah. Like when you spread, it's like a line, like right? And then you want to be like break it, right? And be like, and then like talk like a normal person, right? And then like go back to spreading, right? So be like, spread like go fast and explain why you're like winning a theory shell, extend all the arguments, do good job on the line, then be like, okay, I've won theory, they've conceded drop the debater, no way they can win the round, even if you don't buy any of the last arguments that I made, let's go to substance. And then you like inhale, and then you like blitz out your arguments on substance. I think that's really compelling, right? Because you're explaining why, like you're just like walking them through the round, and instead of just going at 300 words per minute the entire time, right? But it also still gives you the technical advantage, right? You don't want to. I think sometimes 2NRs overcorrect in that the entire 2NR is just really slow, or the entire 2AR is just really slow, and it's like there's no way they can win this argument because they've conceded this. If the entire thing is framing, one, it's boring for the judge. Honestly, sometimes, obviously, judges don't always like flowing speed, but sometimes it wakes them up. And if you go really slowly, you'll just sound one. Also, you'll sound. There'll be a couple problems with going too slowly and being just crystallize-y. I don't know if that's a word, but just crystallize-y the entire time. The first reason it's bad would be that the judge will think you're less technically competent than your opponent, right? Or the fact that if you spread in your earlier speeches, they might be like, oh, I guess they can just spread when they're reading, right? You don't have to go as fast as when you're like reading off a document. I don't think anyone is as fast reading off a document as they are making arguments on the top of their head or extending things. However, you should still be going at like a decent pace, because then the judge will be like, think you're technically competent, and also just like mathematically, you're more likely to win if you like are able to make more arguments on the things you need to win in order to win the round, and you can make more arguments if you go faster. So don't abandon speed, but go fast, break it, be like, okay, that was a lot, but the big takeaways are they conceded drop a debater, they have no RBI, so it's a no risk issue for me, and they've conceded that like my shell is best for time skew, which is the most important standard under fairness. They've conceded the fairness voter. No way they can win at this point. But let's go to substance. Again, these arguments are just like mini framing issues in between to make it really clear. Making eye contact, that's really important. You sort of want to be like pleading with the judge, like looking into their eyes and being like, listen, like there's no other option other than voting for me. Right? Like being like, I know they're going to go for substance. And make it seem like it's a conversation between the two of you. And they might be like, because maybe when they were flowing around, they'll be like, oh, I bet this debater's going to go for substance in the next speech. Or maybe, oh, I bet they're going to go for this argument on time skew. The time skew doesn't exist because everyone has 13 minutes, right? Maybe they're thinking of something like that. Because judges do want to, like, they do predict the next speeches. They're not just like robots flowing. Like when I judge, I definitely think about what the next speech might go for. Just because it's interesting to think about, right? I'm not making the arguments for them, but I'm thinking about it. So if you're thinking about it and then their opponent looks at you and is like, I know they're going to go for the argument that time skew doesn't exist because both speeches are 13 minutes. That doesn't matter because they've conceded the argument that the round is skewed and I lose 7 minutes of that speech time when they're being unfair. Or something like that. It makes it seem like like you're understanding them and you understand what they might be thinking, but it doesn't matter. Yeah.
So what you're saying is like these last two speeches are mostly defense?
No, they're not defense. So you're extending. So the extension of the path of least resistance is offensive.
It's strictly okay.
So you want to explain why you're winning offense, and then you do defense on their speech. These framing issues are just preemptive defense to what they're going to go for. But some of it, like for example, it was very offensive to say, like, I've won the theory shell. You have no option other than to vote for me on theory because they've conceded drop the debater. For example, that would be offensive because the drop the debater implication, in case you didn't know, is just a reason on a theory shell that would say that means you lose. That means your opponent loses. So that argument would say that. Or maybe to get off theory for a second and explain it in the context of two case debates, right? If they've conceded a reason why maybe governments can only use utilitarianism, like the Gooden card or the Waller card. Are you guys like vaguely familiar with those arguments? The governments can only use util. So if you extend governments can only use utilitarianism, maybe you explain that means the framework debate is over, right? Because they have not done enough work on the specific actor of the resolution and made their moral obligation specific enough. So even if they've won every other argument in their framework, even if they've won that practical reason is like really cool and good, it maybe doesn't matter because governments can't use practical reason. Because governments are just like entities made up of a bunch of practical reasoners and can't have some like unified reason. Governments have to be utilitarian. Something like that, where you make the round really simple to think about. Okay, so I think generally, so that's selling it to the judge. And then I've basically just been talking about even if scenarios the entire time, right? Who can give me an example of when it might be good to be like, even if that you don't buy that argument? Here's another one. Actually, raise your hand if you know what an even if scenario might be. Okay, who wants to explain it? New hands, you maybe like, if you raise your hand, maybe tell you know what it is. Maybe you can now explain what it is. Yeah.
So it's like even if you think I lose on this flow, you can still vote for me on this flow.
Yeah.
Like on like another flow.
Exactly. Or you can also do it like within a flow. Yeah, like even if I'm losing this advantage to my utilaf, right, to my plan, even if I'm losing the warming advantage, I'm winning the super soldiers advantage. And nuclear war outweighs global warming because I had the argument in the app that said nuclear war was the biggest impact or the closest we are to extinction. Something like that, right? Or you explain why you know that they're winning and you explain why the judge didn't care about it. So I think it's two things. Even if can be used in two different ways. The first way is even if I'm losing, even if they're winning this, like even if I'm behind on this, right? Even if I'm behind on it, it doesn't matter because this outweighs. Or it can be, even if for some reason you think I'm losing the argument that I'm going for the most in my speech, you could also vote on me here. Go vote for me here. Does that make sense? So one is like, okay, I'm losing this argument. Doesn't matter because I'm winning this one. Another one is like, I am absolutely winning this argument. But if there's a shadow of a doubt in your mind, you can also vote on this argument. Or if you know one argument requires a lot of like judge intervention, for example, if the violation to a theory shell happened in cross-X, and your opponent's making a bunch of reasons why it's unverifiable, or why judges don't flow cross-X, maybe the judge didn't flow cross-X, something like that, where you explain why you're really winning the shell, and you maybe do make a bunch of reasons why cross-X violations are key and why cross-X is binding, make a bunch of those reasons. You can then make the argument that, like, even if you think cross-X is unverifiable and you don't feel comfortable voting on it, you can vote on this. And sometimes judges will be appreciative of that because they'll understand that one flow is the flow where you're clearly winning, but maybe there's just some reason why they might not feel comfortable voting on it. So then they'll just be appreciative of the extra F. A lot of times as a judge, for example, if the theory debate was really messy, but one debater didn't have the RVI, right? So the RVI basically means like one debater couldn't win on it and one debater could win on it. The theory debate is really messy, and the debater who read theory and is winning theory, or is going for theory as their main strategy, also extends a substance reason. I might evaluate the substance debate and just quickly look at it and check to see if I have to vote on theory, because it might be really way easier to evaluate and be like, well, regardless of the outcome of the theory debate, whether they win it or lose it, they would win the round, because if they win theory, then I'd vote for them on theory, and if they lose theory, then I'd vote for them on substance. And then the judge just doesn't have to resolve the biggest issues in the round, right? Because they can just say, well, there are two scenarios here. They win theory, I vote for them. They lose theory, I still vote for them on substance. Does that make sense? So sometimes you want to give the judge easy outs or ways to avoid really complicated debates. Or if you know your judge does not understand Kant, for example, and that's your main strategy, going for a Kant path. Or you know they do not understand virtue ethics. Or maybe it was a virtue ethics versus Kant debate, and your judge understands neither, right? You could have clear language in your cards that explains why your framework comes first. Maybe your virtue ethics framework comes before Kant. And you have ways, and you try to explain that in as simple terms as possible. You might be like, listen, I know you don't like resolving framework debates. Maybe don't say that. It might be considered sort of offensive. So instead say something like, listen, even if you don't want to resolve this really messy framework debate, it doesn't matter, because they've conceded both one of my contentions and in turn to the NC. So in either scenario, you vote for me. There have literally been rounds where I've drawn flow charts with my hands, explaining the different scenarios in which I win theory or don't win theory, and then if I win theory, you vote for me. If I don't win theory, I either win the contention or I lose the contention. I win the framework or lose the framework. If I win the framework, you vote for me. If I lose the framework, you vote for me on a turn. I've actually drawn these flow charts with my hands to explain really messy rounds, and done things like that. It looks a little bit silly, but if you need to make it very clear, making verbal flow charts is really key. Let me see. Yeah. Does everyone also know what a flow chart is? Just make sure. Yeah. So I think a really good way to conceive of the round is in a flow chart. Yeah. This actually is basically a bunch of just metaphors to think about crystallization, and hopefully one sticks. So it's this is what you're going for, right? You're going for, let's make it different. You're going for the K, right? You're going for the K. So maybe your strategy is, ideally, you win the roll of the ballot, right? So yes, and then offense to the K, right? Offense question mark, and you want to say yes, you win. So then, yay, you won the round, right? That's your ballot story. But alternatively, it's you win the roll of the ballot. Let's say, so you know yes. Do you win the offense? No. But then maybe that means, okay, we go to something else. So I'll explain that in a second. So roll of ballot? No. Do you win offense to theirs? Maybe yes. In which case, you win. And maybe if you're not winning offense to your own roll of ballot, it's okay because they don't have offense either. Maybe, right? In which case you could say, oh, my roll of ballot's a wash. Even if I win it, you can't evaluate it because neither of us have offense. So then maybe you go to theirs. Or maybe you say presumption or something like that. No one has any offense, so automatically vote for me. for some other reason, because it's harder to affirm or something, right? Basically, the idea is, at any layer of the flowchart, you might have a conceivable reason to vote for you. So you do an office theirs, yeah, so you win in that case. So even if I don't win my roll of ballot, I win office to their roll of ballot, so I win. Do you win office to their roll of ballot? Maybe no. So maybe that's the case where you lose. So you want to conceive of that. But obviously you shouldn't say, if I don't win office to their roll of ballot, I lose, right? You just want to make sure you shield this as much as possible, right? You want to prevent this from happening. So you can go for everything else. Maybe you can go for the presumption ballot story. This is the clearest one for sure, right? So you want to go for this, but then you want to just shield against this. So you want to really block off these roads as much as possible. But yeah, so this is like sort of a messy diagram. Does that make any sense to you guys? Okay, cool. What time is it?
51.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so maybe for the last little bit, the issue with crystallization drills is like you have to have an entire round to have like a bunch of messy layers. So does anyone have like flows or like remember their last practice round? Okay, does anyone not have their flows? Everyone like at least will vaguely remember their round, right? Everyone remembers what happened. So why don't we all get up and make speeches to the wall, or like just stand up and give a crystallization speech. So why don't you just redo your last speech? So if you're affirming, redo it twice, and if you're negating, do it once. And do it with as much crystallization as possible. And I'm going to be walking that in, like, giving tips. And you gotta be super strict about time here. Like, I'm gonna ask you to pause your timer so I can like give you chance.